Hey, 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 and welcome to our webinar today where we will be talking about holistic leadership in a healthy workplace. It's Saturday. I am extremely excited to have you on the call, as I know there are many other places that you could be, but I am ecstatic that you have chosen to be here with me. So if you would, please do me a favor, go ahead and drop your name and where you're calling from in the Q&A box, as I would love to know who's on the call with me. As last time we had people calling in from Florida, North Carolina, D.C., Virginia. We've had people on the West Coast. So I would love to see who is taking time out of their busy Saturday to join me, as that means a lot. And if you see down at the bottom, it is a Q&A box, and you can just go ahead and pop that in right there. I am currently on the line from Baltimore, Maryland, where, as we'll talk about what living a holistic life is, and for me, it is also spending time with those that I love and adore and that support me. And so I am at a sister girlfriend's house having an amazing time. Veronica is in the building from VA by way of DC. Thanks for being on the call, as always. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So as we know, holistic leadership in a healthy workplace is why we're here. It's what's brought us here. But what I want to start us out with is talking about the importance of focusing. I know it's hard because it's Saturday. But today I want you, as much as possible, to focus in on you and to, as much as possible, minimize distractions and to give yourself permission to be fully present. And so what that means is turning off everyone else so you can turn you on, because this is your well-deserved time. So if we can do that, that would be greatly appreciated. And so I want to spend a few seconds just talking to you about who I am, why we're on this webinar, and the intention of what I have for us to gain. So as you may or may not know, my name is Dr. Angela Shuttlesworth, and I love everything about holistic leadership. I love everything about a healthy workplace. So I am beyond words excited to be on this call and to take you on a journey with me. So hopefully by the end of this call, you will have found a way to grow, to develop, to have some aha moments, and most of all, to say, yes, this is a strategy that I am going to employ, not just tomorrow, not next week, but I'm going to employ immediately. And so that is the goal that I have for you. So I can't consider myself the social worker for your business. In social work, we assess, I strategically intervene, and then help your business to thrive. Healthy Villages is a consulting firm that really just loves the importance of honoring people's experience, teaching people how to show up and show out, and that comes from us honoring our genius, which ties into our conversation for today. And so I want to go ahead and jump into our wisdom moment. And the first thing I want to do to set the tone and the intention for this webinar is to remind us of a quote by the good old Audrey Hepburn, where she says, "Nothing is impossible. The word itself says what? I'm possible." So as we have this conversation today, I want you to think that in everything where you're considering your workplace, considering even your life circumstances or your ability to lead or your ability to show up and show out, and sometimes the first thing that comes to mind is thoughts of the barriers or the things that stand in our way. Instead of that, I want you to think, I hear you, but I'm possible. Not it is possible, but I'm possible. I'm possible to show up for myself. And so in this webinar, we have three major tasks. And as it says on the slide, we have work to do. So hopefully you're ready. And so as it says, we're going to talk about your holistic genius and who you are in that manner. So we're going to spend some time doing some internal work, which means that's the work that comes from within. Then we're going to talk about your leadership. And I want to give yourself permission to redefine what your role is and how you see leadership, how you see your ability to lead others. And then we're going to spend some time talking about a healthy workplace environment. And as a leader, what does that mean with your role and your toll? And when we say that, it's literally, living in Norfolk, Virginia, we clearly know what tolls are. And if you live anywhere in the somewhat urban area. You know, when you're going through that turnpike, there's a cost that you have to pay to do business, right? So there's a cost that you have to pay to be in your leadership role. And so we're going to talk about that. So when you do something with intention, it has a different level of energy behind it. So intention number one is that we understand what it means to have a healthy workplace environment. And as you see on this picture, I love this slide. It's on my business cards. It's on our website. It's the first thing you see. I just absolutely love it because they are like jumping for joy. And as in Eat, Pray, Liver, when Katut says to smile with your liver, basically with every ounce of you. And these people are clearly smiling with their liver. And so our goal is to get your employees to have this amount of joy, but not only for your employees to do that, but we want you to have that as a leader. So don't think in this webinar about what you're doing for everyone else. Think about you yourself and how you relate to a healthy workplace environment. So to begin and to put you in a place that honors that experience, I want you to answer the question, I know that I am creating a healthy workplace when I. So just think about what are the things that you are doing when you are contributing to your team, your staff, your departments, being able to have that bliss and for you to have that bliss as well. So when you know that you're contributing, what are the things that are taking place in that moment? Some of the things people normally say are when I'm able to really just show up authentically, when I'm able to be myself, when I'm able to demonstrate my skills. Some people may even think when I'm able to be respected, when I'm able to get the job done. Those are generally things that we think about as it relates to leadership. And so I want you to think about that because this is the time where you get to define that. And some of you may or may not have tuned into the Healthy Workplace Toolkit. That is a free giveaway for you all if you sign up to our email list. And included in that is insight into the 7 keys to creating a healthy workplace environment. And so I go in very detail on the trainings that you get as well as the ebook and other additional items that you have. But so today we're just going to very briefly talk about them and then talk about the one that's guiding this webinar today. So what we want you to do is, one, honor everyone's journey. We never know where people are coming from or going to. So as we're considering who our staff are and what their journeys are, you don't want to take for granted the skills and skill sets that they've had in other workplace environments prior to getting into your workplace, right? And so if I've had certain skills and abilities that I've been doing for 15 odd years and now I don't get the opportunity to use that, what does that mean? Does that adjust how I show up in this new current role? Do I feel as if I'm not able to bring all of me? Do I feel constrained? So there's all of those different conversations. Number 2, establish excellence as your norm. So one of the things that we've done is gotten to a place where we accept mediocrity as if it's acceptable. We give, participation ribbons to children and say, just for showing up, you get this award. And oftentimes people just get a paycheck just for showing up. We haven't really clearly set guidelines and baselines for data to tell us what does excellence actually mean? What's the language that we use around it? So you want to think about that. Advance your culture with innovation. That is one of my favorites, if I have to say so myself. Don't tell anybody. But advance your culture with innovation. Anything that isn't growing is dead, right? So you want to create a space where people are able to take their mind to a higher level. Earlier we were listening to some lyrics from Robert Glasper, and he reminded me of one of my favorite hymns where it says, every round goes higher and higher. So you want to put even your business and your workplace in a place where you are able to go higher and higher. And you want to do that from a place of not just doing repetition, doing the same things over and over, but thinking of what are some creative and innovative ways for us to influence the culture of our workplace, because your workplace has a culture. And then the thing that is driving us today is to lead with vulnerability and joy. Now, Brene Brown has that on lock as far as defining what vulnerability is, and the whole idea of vulnerability as the birthplace of creativity, and how it is in our courage ability to stand up and to talk about our experience as leaders that we're able to do certain things. And then to be joyful. A lot of times when you see pictures of leaders, it's always this generally a male and particularly a white male standing with his arms folded and, a stern look on his face to show, okay, I have power. But I want to, give us and challenge us to talk about leadership in a non-traditional way. What is it that, again, going back to that initial picture, where you have somebody that's ecstatic? I would get on my staff nerves sometimes because I would just be so excited. They'd be like, okay, Angie, you're just a little bit too crunk. I'm going to need you to bring it down. And I'm like, no, I need you to get on my level and come up and join me in this place of bliss. And then T, we want you to thrive with efficiency and passion. So it's not merely your ability to just survive, but it is a desire for you to thrive. Get to that place where you are, again, showing up and showing out consistently and efficiently. So how many operations or standard operation procedures do you have where you're just doing it for the sake of doing it? It's because we've always done it. And then how are people doing the work? Is it that I'm just, putting the marbles in the marble jar? Or am I passionate about the way that I put the marbles in the marble jar? Do I have the marbles and I'm making a beat with them and I'm throwing them in and really just excited about being able to bring myself to that specific task? Here with the intention to act. And that is oftentimes we say we're listening to our employees, we're listening to our clients or our consumers, but taking it a step further and, you hear and then actually listening. And not just listening, but doing it with the intention to do something about it. It's not just a customer survey that we're talking about. It's not just saying, okay, I hear you, somebody did not perform their task the way that they did. I hear you, this your workload is too exhaustive. But what is the intention behind it? When you create the space to hear from your staff, what are you doing with that? And then lastly, I want you to yield to the awesomeness of you. So oftentimes we are talking about team dynamics and how teams manifest various different things. But this last one is about the individual. So how do you get them to talk about them and feel themselves as an individual? So when we say you, how many times do we stop to say, thank you, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you? So oftentimes people feel, just surrounded or submerged in the dynamics of the team, which is great. We want to talk about team dynamics, but we also want people to feel individually that they matter to the team and that the team could not do it without them. And so not just that they're there, but as it says, to yield to the awesomeness of you. So it is awesome and amazing and all those beautiful words that are not just beautiful words, but are adjectives that let us know how we feel and appreciate those individuals. So we want to think about that. So what does that mean to holistic leadership in a healthy workplace environment? I want a couple of things for you to consider as we talk about healthy workplaces. So one, how does this method apply to your field? Obviously, some specialties or some particular businesses have more wiggle room than others as it relates to having this, ability to be innovative. Like there's certain limits with that to a certain degree, because if you're doing certain forms of research or certain things like that, we don't want to obviously bring harm in our ability to try and do things a different way. But there's other times where you want to find the highest level of your ability to do things in a way that honors everyone's experience, right? So when you're thinking about each of those keys, how does it apply to your field? And then where is your business on the change readiness spectrum? So when we're talking about our ability to change and to be ready to incorporate change, what does that mean? Is the culture a place where people really have lost a lot of hope and they really just don't believe in hope? They don't believe in the ability to change because we've said we're going to do things time and time again, but there's really not been anything there. Is it a business where you know that you all start initiatives and then you come back because the funding always falls through? So you have gotten to a place where you really just don't even really, people come to the meetings, they show up because they have to be there, but it's not a place where people get excited. So you want to think about that again as if you go into your workplace, which I hope you do, having this conversation around the 7 keys to creating a healthy workplace. What are some of the things that they would be ready to receive, and what are the aspects of the healthy workplace environment that they wouldn't necessarily? So don't get discouraged by their inability to see all of it. Think about those areas where they are more higher on their ability as far as the change readiness spectrum. Who has the power of influence and sustainability? So oftentimes, again, when we're bringing change to the workplace, we don't want to just think about how can we influence people to do certain things, but we want to also begin with the end in mind. So how do we sustain this change that we brought to the workplace? And so I also want you to kind of think about people, not just internally, not just your team, but externally. So what is the voice of your clients? What is the voice of your different stakeholders? Like, who is able to literally bring the power of influence to make sure that this is not just a one-time thing or a one-time conversation. It literally changes the way that you do business. Next is, what systems are in place to support you? It's really great to talk about all these innovative ideas, but do you have the data storage capability to track certain things? Do you have the certain staff and resources that are able to do those things? Is all of those things in place? You can't do it all by yourself. So rather that's human capital, rather that's technology, rather that is literally handwritten or typed up standard operating procedures, whatever it is that you have to do to document what those systems are, what are the things that you do to have in place where you're talking about efficiency? What does that look like? And then lastly, when is change allowed and what are the legal implications? So the reality is that our team and our staff have the ability to say what is acceptable and what's unacceptable, right? So sometimes people say, you know what, we can't bring on new initiatives until it's a new fiscal year because things are so tight, or we only bring on new initiatives after each quarter. So those are realities for some businesses. But the reason I have on here perceived or actual is because sometimes we have these cultures where people are, policy says this, we can't do that, but the policy doesn't, either one, it really doesn't exist, or two, it's a policy that was from 1922 that has been updated 10 times and people just aren't aware of it. So you want to think about all of these aspects really and what's actually perceived or what is actually there. So again, how, where, who, what, and when as you are going to employ these methods. So before we move on, I want you to think about how does this apply and what are some things that I can do. So one is to honor your powerful pen. And I remember being in elementary school and I had a teacher, I just got in so much trouble. And yes, I was smart and I could do my work, but it was the teacher's ability to give me the grade. And my daddy had to tell me that you have to remember the power of the pen, because you can do all that you want to do, but at the end of the day, the teacher is the one who makes that decision in many ways. So sometimes it's not just a simple A, B, C, or D answer. And I, of course, got to realize that as a professor as well. But as you honor your powerful pen, I want you to think about the policies that you're making and all of the decision-making that comes into the work that you're doing as a leader, and how does each of those activities align with the healthy method? So every decision that you're making, is it in alignment with all of those things that we just talked about? Next is to use your voice. Oh, my goodness. We don't need you to just talk about this in your head, to talk about it to somebody at home. We need you to advocate for connection and intentional engagement at all levels. So when we talk about employee engagement, how are you engaging? Is it something that's consistent where it's just a one-way conversation where you're talking at them opposed to having a conversation with them? And is it something that's just in your department but hasn't translated into the culture of your entire workplace or your business? So you want to think about all of those things and how are you in your position of power using your voice? And then lastly, in this area, we want you to walk your talk. So it's not something that you're just talking about, but it is something that you are living by example. And as it says on the slide, we want you to give your team an example that they can believe in. And not just that they can believe in one time, but it's something they can believe in consistently. So as a leader, we know that when you're out around other people who have various different levels, even when you're outside of the business with partners or just who you are, you're a person that's advocating for this method. And that is something that will, of course, translate. So I want you to think about that, and that's our section on healthy workplace. So as we dive into intention number 2, is to get you to honor yourself as a holistic genius. I'm just smiling on the phone because, Most of the time we, one, don't even take ourselves seriously in understanding who we are holistically. But to just get to that place of genius, ow, you'll see it in a second. So to start off this, of course, I have to ask you a question. And that is, I want you to answer, I know that I am holistically honoring my genius when I. So what are those things that you are doing that lets you know that you are holistically honoring your genius? So I want you to take a few seconds and write that down. All right, so now that you've had a few seconds to think about that, let's dive in and start with a place of wisdom. So I have to throw in Mother Audre Lorde when she says, caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So it's something that I'm willing to not only go to war for, but I'm understanding the politics of it, how it shows up. I get to determine what that process is. Others don't get to define it for me. So caring for myself, other times people, again, will say, oh, that's self-indulgence. You're being so selfish. No, it's not just self-preservation. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So you want to think about that from a place of I'm willing to do whatever it takes to care for myself and to honor myself holistically. So what do I mean when I'm saying holistic? And I have some language for you to use and to remember moving forward, which is I am holistically honoring all of me when I do so unapologetically. So, and when we say who, all of me, what do you mean by all of me? And as a social worker, one of the things that we consistently talk about is that we are multidimensional beings. So in order to honor all of the dimensions and all of the aspects of us, you have to have a multidimensional understanding of who you are. So as we talk about that, I want you to think about yourself in these ways. The social work perspective has us think of ourselves on a biological level, on a psychological level, on a social level, in a spiritual level, and a cultural level. Me being me, I had to add a few others. So the last three I add to the equation, which are your sexual side, your financial well-being, as well as your political well-being. Do you feel like you're even able to advocate for yourself? Do you feel like you have any power around what's around you? If I don't feel like I can fill the pothole that's on my street, I may not feel like I can change the world. So all of those things and those abilities to honor your health. So you think, again, on your biological health and wellness, your psychological health and wellness, your social health and wellness, your spiritual health and wellness, your cultural health and wellness, your sexual health and wellness, your financial health and wellness, and your political health and wellness. And the reason I felt like it was necessary for us to go over each and every one of those things again is that generally we don't look at them in the confines of them being a healthy aspect of us. So if I'm not able to honor myself culturally, I literally feel like pieces of me are dying. I will travel, I will do whatever I have to do to honor that piece or aspect of me, right? So in the same token, my wellness holistically is contingent upon my ability to honor that aspect of me. So I want you to think about that, and nothing is off the table. So oftentimes it's like, oh, I'm doing everything else, but, I'll get to it later, right? But first I want to ask you, what is the area of you that you nurture the most? So when we're thinking about each of those things, we know that oftentimes it's either the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, so it's the area that we know we have the most deficit in, so now currently we're nurturing it the most, or it may be the one that's doing the best, so we want to put all of our energy in there. Or it's the thing that people have told you that you're supposed to do. So what is the area of your life that you nurture the most? Next, I want to ask you, what is the area, when you think about the area of me, looking at yourself in all of these areas, the area of me that I abandon the most? What is the area that you know that doesn't get your attention, that you just move to the side and say, you know what, it'll handle itself, or somebody else is going to care for, or you can honestly say you've never even thought about it. You didn't understand that the way that you think, the words that are in your head, your psychological well-being had that much of an influence on how you showed up, even sexually or financially. So we know that we emotionally eat, right? You've heard that saying before. And so you would also emotionally spend your money, right? So you want to think about, again, how all of these things have a connection. And the way that you holistically see yourself is the way that you see yourself on each of these domains. And my favorite word, genius. And I asked the question, do you honestly see yourself as a genius? And if so, what is the language that you use that tells you so? When you're finding and honoring your genius, that even just to say genius is something that oftentimes hasn't been a word that's been available to us to use as it relates to us. And if you use it, it's like, oh, you're just showing up, or oh, you think you're better than other people, or who do you think you are, and all of those various different things. So you want to think about, one, what is your understanding or relationship just with the language, just with the word genius? And then also your ability to bring it into your workplace. See those people around you as geniuses? Do you take the time to honor their experience and their skill set and see, you know what, I work with some smart people. The way that Jane Doe does this, the way that Tamika does that, the way that Veronica brings this, all of those things make them geniuses. So we want to think about that. And then not only seeing it in those around us, but we want to make it personal. How often in your workplace do you see yourself as a genius? That you say, you know what, nobody could have done that like me but me. There's something about who I am in this workplace that deserves recognition. There's something of who I am that is genius. And so you want to just always bring it back home and make it personal. And then next is to lead from the highest power of you. So in coming up with the coaching program that I developed, I always think about the terminology and the phrase where people say submit to the highest power, right? And generally that's something that's external in our spiritual world. But I want people to submit to the highest power of themselves. So if you were submitting to the highest power of you, what would be that element of you? What would be going on as you look at the highest power of you? And then from that place is where I want you to lead. So I want you to lead from the highest power of you, because that is the place in where you make the most impact. That is the place in which you are able to truly show up and show out. And which goes into our next place of unapologetic living. I am a genius. I take it with me everywhere I go. And I'm unapologetic about it. There's nothing to be shameful of. There's nothing that you should feel less of who you are, because remember, we're operating from the highest power of who we are. And then not only are we doing it again one time, we are making it our norm, right? So that is something for you to be able to do consistently. So with your team, you don't want to just lead from this place just one time, once during a certain season, when it's time for you to work on evals and you want them to see you in a positive light, because you want to woo them over, because you know you're going to have those hard conversations. We call them the Oreo conversations, where on one side you give them something good, you put a whole lot of bad in the middle, and you try and top it with something good on the other side, because you had no good and well, you hadn't consistently been leading the way you should have the whole year. Yeah, I know about that, and hopefully that's not you. And if it is, then stop it. So we're going to make sure that you are consistently leading from the highest place of you. So what do we do with this? So, of course, I got action steps for you each way. So as we're talking about our holistic genius, what I need for you to do is to nurture your decisions. So as we talked before about the pen in the workplace, I need you to think about the pen in your life. So how are you nurturing the decisions? And understanding that your path is worth the investment. Oftentimes, we're always supporting other people. We're always thinking about the well-being of our staff and how it impacts them. But as a leader, you need to think about your decisions and how you nurture them yourself. Then I need you to cultivate your voice. And it's not just a matter of you putting down the right the fertile ground and your ability to till the land, but I need you to cultivate your voice in a way that allows you to reintroduce yourself. And I love it. I always think about JC when he makes that introduction. He says, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is what? So you need to come up with a way that reintroduces you in your new voice, in your new way, so that you are unapologetically able to, again, operate from that space as a norm. And lastly, as it says, not to survive, but to thrive. In every hat that you wear, in every position, I need you to shine. I don't need you just to be present. I don't need you to say, well, in this particular arena, I am not able to really do that because the people around me, there's already people in that light. So let me just go back and, dim mine a little bit more. No, we don't need that. I need you to show up and show out consistently. So at this moment, I just want you to pause for the cause, and I want us to chat. So if you can tell me one major thing that you've learned thus far and will implement immediately, I want you to tell me that now in the Q&A box. So one of the things at this point that people generally think about are their ability to, I got a couple of things over here in the Q&A box. Sorry, I've been missing out. Okay, so earlier I had when I am being the support my team needs and being the example. Awesome. Sexual and financial wellness are areas that I never really think about and just expect them to work out. Good stuff. That is very true. Those are the areas that generally people just are neglectful. And some people say, why are you talking about sexuality or sexual well-being with leadership? The reality is some of y'all know good and well in your workplace, when people are performing at a certain level, some people say they just need them some blank, right? So we're like, ooh, you need to go get with whoever your lover is. People, you say that again in conversation, but it's not something that we think about from a proactive standpoint. It's generally something that's reactionary to people not showing up and showing out. So, but if we start from that place of saying, okay, that's a true element of me that I need to honor, I don't want to have people gossiping about me, saying that that's something that I need to go get, right? So that's good. Good stuff. I'm loving these comments. All right, truth. I never think of myself as a genius because I don't want to be seen as trying to, quote, unquote, show out. But it is true that we must be able to recognize what we and others bring to the table. That is so true because a reality is all of us, when we get to that place of collective genius, that is the place of really meeting the mark, because that's not just one thing for you to get and to submit to your highest power of you, but once you get to that place where you're submitting to the highest power of your team, now we're rolling with it again. We're really in a big league at that point. And then last, I'm going to go with this last comment. It says, I will immediately start paying attention to the geniuses around me. They need to be recognized and want to do their best. I love that. I love that. Stopping to pause for the cause to honor those around you. Thanks for sharing. All right. Let's dive right on in. We have one more section to go. So you all are doing really well. And that is in talking about high power leadership. And so as we just said in the last section, by now if you're on this webinar, you know that high power leadership is not power where you get to exert onto others. Remember, the high power leader knows that we are operating from the highest power of ourselves. And we do that when we honor ourselves holistically and we honor our genius. So as always with each section, we want to start off with our wisdom word. And our wisdom word for this section is from good old Albert Einstein. And I love where he says, a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. And that is the truth. Because as we know that when we try new things, the reality is we're going to learn some things along the way, right? And so currently we're doing a Lead with Vulnerability and Joy series on Facebook. And one of the things that we noted yesterday was around how you allow yourself the freedom to know the fear aspect of, letting people know what you don't know. And what is your perception around that? Do you see it as an opportunity for change? Do you see it as something that's a deficit that you're willing to work 30-something hours just to prove that you know something? Where there's an opportunity where you can just bring somebody on and say, Oh, it's opportunity for partnership. I don't know that. You do. Let's work together. So people don't think like that. So I love Albert Einstein's statement, a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. And we know that mistakes are our ability to do what? To fail up, to learn from the experience. And yes, it may be considered a failure, but I welcome failures. I'm like, oh, I dropped the ball on that. But guess what? Now I know, and there's an opportunity for me to do it again. Because what does that do? It tells me that I'm in action and that I'm doing something, and that's what matters the most. So as we start this, as we did with each of the other sections, I want you to stop and to pause and kind of think about what this means for you. So I know that I am operating in my highest power as a leader when I what? So what is the example for you when you know that you are operating for your highest self? And I'm going to pause and allow you to kind of jot a few things down. At this point, I always think about Jeopardy, and I normally sing the Jeopardy song. But I'm on my Robert Glasper thing, so I'm just going to give you a little silence. I know that I am operating in my highest power as a leader when I. And, of course, as always, feel free to share some of that with me in the chat box if you desire. Sounds like you moved away from the speaker. Okay? Please let me know if this is better. I got a little excited, so I did kind of move the phone. Okay, how to consistently thrive in all areas or aspects. Okay, I just missed that. So are you asking, or are you saying that that is one of the areas when you know? And if not, I can go back to that slide. And thank you for joining us from Cleveland. Okay, would you email a transcript or outline as you've identified several areas in which I need to reflect on this summer? Awesome and insightful discussion. Thank you. So unfortunately, I will not be emailing the slides, but I do have something even better. I have the opportunity that I'll talk about in a second for us to have a conversation afterwards, and you'll get something that would definitely enable you to do that this summer and to get it for free. It's nothing at cost to you. So you'll get that and more. So you're not going to get the transcript from this, but you are going to get something that's going to help you in that way. All right. So as you've had a few moments to think about yourself to operate from your highest power as a leader, you all know by now that I am very non-traditional when I have conversations around any topic for real. Of course, we know the basics, but it's always my desire to take material and to see how I can use it for other things. So this next section, and this is our last slide actually, is far from formal leadership. So this is not, we talk about authoritative, participatory, all of those different things when we're talking about leadership and management. These are a series of words that are generally used when talking about public speaking. So I attended Speak and Write with the great Lisa Nichols, and she was talking about the 4 different styles of public speaking. And when I heard it, I was like, oh, my God, that so relates to leadership. And talking to another friend of mine who's very familiar with the word, she was like, you can't do that. You can't talk about leadership in that way. You're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, that's even more reason for me to do it. Because, one, I believe in it, and sometimes we have to do something different. As you all may know, that Healthy Village is one of our 3 modules, is creative empowerment. And so there's always a desire for us to creatively find ways to empower people. And sometimes the language that we've been using for time and time again just doesn't work anymore, right? So I want to use this language, and I've actually modified it a little bit, at first by mistake, but then I realized that it was a beautiful mistake that was made. So, again, filling up, right? All right, so she says that in public speaking, there is the first type is informational. And so even though I'm talking about it in that context, think about you as a leader. So informational, the example she gave us was it's information only. So you think about like the traffic school and how regardless of your experience, you get the substance. They go in, they get the information, and that's it. So think about, are you an informational type leader where you're coming, you're giving your staff the task, and then you leave? you're dropping something off, and then you're saying, okay, get the job done, and I'll come back just to see how many pigs you were able to get into the hole. Is that all that you do? Inspirational is what she had next in between there was motivational. And those are the people that get you excited from the outside in. So you think about those experiences where people are walking on fire, breaking wood. It's a topical experience to get you on fire. So it runs off in 90 days. So in 60 days, we talked about our ability we need to check in on people. So we're wanting to do something that's a bit more. So the next one after that, and again, motivational is that gets you excited from the outside in. Inspirational is when you get people excited from the inside out. It's when they are able to do internal reflection and to tap in. Again, remember, we're tapping in to avoid tapping out. So you want to tap in to the genius that's within your staff. Do you inspire them to be able to do those things? So the thing that I added in was spiritual. So normally people don't think about spirituality in the workplace, right? And so I want you to think about what do you really have faith in within your workplace? Do you really believe that the other teams that you support and the other teams that you rely on are going to give you what you need in order to do the job? Do your staff and your team members have the faith in that as well? So you think about the spirit in which you move. What is the energy around it? And that is a way. And how does that relate to how you lead? Because if you don't have faith or belief in what's possible, your staff are not going to have that as well. And then lastly, which is the ultimate goal of public speaking, but what I want to offer to you as the ultimate goal of leadership is transformation. And so when you talk about transformational speaking and transformational leadership, it is where you're willing to go to the darkest places and walk them back out, where you're willing to push their buttons, and you think about that you are not committed or concerned with being liked. You are more committed to your goals, and they also remind you that it is what they said they wanted. So when you know your staff, you've honored their experiences, you know what their goals are in life. And so you think about that and you say, you know what, I am more concerned with your breakthrough than I am with your comfort. How many of you are, as leaders, are willing to make your staff uncomfortable for a moment to be comfortable for a lifetime? To say that, wow, this position or this job pushed us to the next level. It's the place that allowed for us to really show up, and that this job not only just gave me an opportunity to make money, but it gave me the opportunity to change my life. And that's the type of leadership that I want you to be able to have. And that comes when you understand that your staff and your team are not a threat to you. They are an opportunity for you to truly be the leader that you want to be. Because remember, everything we're talking about, I know you may do it in other avenues of your life, but we're thinking about that in the confines of the healthy workplace. So before we go into our last Q&A, I have a special offer that is just for you, and it goes into what someone was just asking about, and that's the opportunity for us to chat. So one of the things that I'm offering to you is a 30-minute strategy session, oh my goodness, where all you have to do is go on this website, which is www.creatinghealthyvillages.com/scheduling. And if you do that, you will see a free option that's there for you to set up a 30-minute strategy session. And that is an opportunity for us to talk about what's going on in your workplace or what's going on with you and your leadership style, and for us to literally come up with a plan. And then a special gift for you happens when you just show up, not just for me, but when you show up for you. So if you honor your word and actually make your way to the call, then I have a special gift that's for you. And then lastly, what you see here is that also I have a little note for you. If you just send me a testimonial, I'd like to know what your experience was and if you were able to get something from this time. I know you did, so I would just like to know what it is. So if you could just go ahead and shoot me an email at Dr. AMS, which is just actually DRAMS at creatinghealthyvillages.com. And again, if you want to schedule your time with me, that is creatinghealthyvillages.com/scheduling. So before we go, I want to give us the opportunity again where I say let's chat. So drop over in your Q&A box, and it's just a time and space for whatever you need. So I have one. Alrighty, when I am setting a strong example for my team and living my best life for them. I love it. So that must have been in reference to how do you know when you are honoring yourself as your highest power leader. Awesome, awesome. I love it. So one of the things someone asked was, is it okay for me to be various different types of this leadership? Let me go back to the slide so you can see what I'm talking about. When we talk about the 4 different areas, the informational, inspirational, spiritual, and transformational, and I also threw in the motivational conversation as well. Absolutely. And the thing about it is, we don't want you to go into this whole role of just being a social worker, right? And you forget that your job is actually, there has a job that has to be done. So there's some elements where you have to give information. You have to translate information to your staff, and you have to make sure that they're doing it. We want to inspire them, and we have to, tap into who they are. And as we're motivating them, we're using resources externally. So a lot of times we use various different team building exercises and different things like that. So the whole thing, and the reason I use this particular imagery, is that we just always want to have some kind of upward trajectory that lets us know that our ultimate goal is to be able to transform people while they're under our leadership, and to get them to have an experience where they are aligning their personal goals and desires with the personal goals and desires of those that they are doing the work for, right? So it's not just I have to come up to work and only be concerned with the mission and vision of the business that I worked for, but I'm also able to say, wow, my mission and vision for me individually is also being considered, and it's also a part of the conversation. And the more I transform myself as a staff or a person, it allows for me to show up and show out, as we talked about earlier, right? And so then also it leads us to our conversation around how does all of this work with being able to better engage? The more you know and understand your staff, the better you're able to have some more deeper level conversations with them to find out, what are the areas in which you're able to thrive? What's going on in your life when you are impacting work performance because, something may be going on with family and or various things like this. You want to, of course, be very cognizant of the lines with EAP, EEOC, and those things, that nature, as we talked about earlier when we talked about the legality. Remember that? You want to talk about those things, but you also want to, as much as possible, provide the safe space for you to be able to show up as a human being who's holistically well and not, going against them and you're in competition with your staff. Then when you're doing all these things and you're doing this inventory, like one of the things that I do when working with clients is when we're tapping in to find their genius, we do what's called a skills and behaviors inventory. And we go through this process of finding out, what are the various different elements or things that have happened to their lives and how they transpired, how they make decisions. And there's this whole complex yet very simple process that we go through. And in that, oftentimes people are like, wow, I forgot that I know how to do this, or I forgot I know how to do that. And then there's also a place of what you need to grieve and what you need to let go of. And in that process, people either look at other opportunities to make money, rather it comes from going to a new position, and or if it's saying, you know what, I'm empowering my voice to say, yes, I'm on my, job description, it only says that I'm supposed to do X, Y, and Z. But now that I realize that these other things are skills and behaviors and certain things that I'm bringing to the table, am I really getting paid for that? So we need to have another conversation to see how my pay can be increased. Because if I'm doing these jobs, I need to be compensated as much for what I'm performing, right? And the same thing for your staff. So as you're advocating for your staff, you also remember that you need to also advocate for yourself. So we want to think about that. And lastly, again, how you show up in your leadership style is how you get to define it. And so not just necessarily thinking about the traditional forms of leadership, but being cognizant of, what is the leadership that works best for your workplace environment, and knowing that that is what matters most. All righty. So I don't see any more comments or questions. So I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you once again for signing on a Saturday. I didn't think anybody was going to show up, but you did, and I appreciate that, and I thank you so very much for it. And I look forward to speaking with you and working with you in the future, and to know that Healthy Villages is definitely here to help you increase your profit, performance, and power, and that is one strategy at a time. Take care.
The moderator has left the conference.